A Medieval is a retro-inspired first-person shooter that was developed by the New Zealand team Indefatigable, made by Liam Zawada and Simon Rance. The name itself is a pun of medieval, and it came from a Doom mod the two worked on back when they were kids in 1997. Now at first glance, this game might seem like a spiritual sequel of sorts for classic shooters like Hexen or Heretic, especially with the whole fantasy theme and the way a character laughs every time they pick up a new weapon, the same way Corvus did in Heretic. But it was not the intention of the developers. Instead, the duo simply set out to make a retro shooter using magical weapons that would capture the same feeling you got when playing classic shooters like Doom or Quake for the first time, except in a modern context with stuff they thought was cool. But I think that's enough background. Let's just dive in. Upon starting the game, a disembodied voice will begin speaking to you about how they failed to free the land from evil, and when they finish, they drop you out of a vortex into a stone temple. It is from here that you're tasked with choosing a difficulty level that you're going to play on. It's done in a similar way to Quake, in that you must locate a portal in a hub world that represents the difficulty that you want. Hard mode tasks you with completing a simple platforming challenge, and it will shit on you if you fail. You can actually even die while choosing a difficulty level, though not like I know from experience or anything, being the pro gamer I am.
Who can say where the road goes, where the day flows?
After choosing the appropriate difficulty for your skill level, you'll be teleported to the main hub area, and once again, the disembodied voice will speak with you.
Save our lives.
And that's about the extent of the story here. The land has become corrupted, and you need to purge it of evil, because you're the champion. It's simple and sweet, just like the story in any classic shooter. Though in the beginning, your purging is going to be a little bit limited, because the game's going to force you to tackle the episodes in the order it wants you to, starting with the Astral Equinox, and then followed by the Domain of the Sentinels. But don't worry, beat those two and the hub world opens up, allowing you to tackle the next 4 episodes in any order you want, though I still recommend tackling them in production order, based on how difficulty is paced out. But you do you. And once you beat those 4, you'll unlock the 7th and final episode. But I think I'm getting ahead of myself, let's rewind. After playing through a Medieval a bit, you'll begin to realize just how pretty the game is. Whether we're talking about the audacious use of colors throughout, or the beautifully designed and varied architecture, it's all just really pretty to look at. And to top it off, every episode has its own unique theme. So you'll have one episode where you're stomping through a stone-bathed tomb, vaguely similar to the look of the main hub, with the sort of South American ruins vibe. But then another episode, you'll be put into this weird abstract magical realm that's fragmented and suspended in twilight. My personal favorite though is probably episode 5 with its focus on mechanized madness. Plus, there's something I just really dig about the look of the level that's set outside, that's all overcast with fog and rain. It also has these laser cyclops things. Not so much a fan of them. The graphical style itself is also very interesting, and it does a great job of combining the old with the new. There's PBR rendering and other Unreal Engine features that's meshed with this unfiltered texture look of an older shooter. There's also something you may not have noticed yet, but you see these pickups and how they're actually just sprites? Well, the same is true for your weapons when viewed in the first person. No, really, it took me a bit to realize, because they appear to be 3D models, but they're actually 2D sprites. To be more exact, they're normal map sprites, which just means that they're 2D sprites, but they react to light as if they're actually 3D. This gives them a better sense of depth and weight that you don't get from a normal 2D bitmap. It's also just really beautiful to look at. Just look at how pretty this is. It's great. Seriously. Good job. Movement in this game is handled quite well, and I would describe the controls as feeling both tight and floaty, if that makes any sense. You can easily run around enemies and circle straight them to dodge their attacks, all of which are either projectile-based or melee-based. So no hit scanners and everything's dodgeable. But then when you jump, the controls feel a little bit floaty, which gives you some extra air control and makes platforming a little easier, so it's a good kind of floaty, I guess? Of course, even if you did miss a jump, it wouldn't be so bad because this game lacks fall damage, so unless you land in a hazardous pit, you should be fine. Honestly, I'd say the best way to describe the controls is that it feels like a real merging of Doom and Quake, except more so how they would play in our memories. Because in reality, Doom is a little slippery, and Quake's a bit stiff. Now, I used to have a problem with getting out of the water in the game, but it seems like they patched it out. Or the original problem was just caused by me being an idiot. Who knows? Shooting things in a Medieval is also pretty fantastic, and it feels smooth as butter all around. The presentation is super solid. Both the audio and visual feedback when shooting is just fantastic. The guns sound just as punchy and crunchy as they need to, and every time you land a hit, it makes nice, impactful sound. As for visual feedback, enemies will react differently depending on what weapon you use and how you hit them with it. Like with the sword, you can decapitate people if you aim correctly. Meanwhile, the trident will stun like enemies in place. It's just a small touch really, but it really does make each weapon feel different. Of course, it also helps that the game has an impressive arsenal, where no single weapon feels like a throwaway. Now, following the original Doom, the game gives you a 7-weapon lineup. Heck, it even follows the whole pistol, shotgun, machine gun, rocket launcher setup too, even though there's no guns. Firstly, you got the staff the Azure Orb, which will be filling in for the pistol. It's essentially a water staff that shoots out blue orbs that'll home in on your enemies. Your shotgun equivalent here is the Whisperer's Edge, which is a blade that shoots out an arc of green energy with every slash. The Voltride fills in for the machine gun, and it's a trident that shoots lightning. It also has the added bonus of allowing you to pump extra lightning into an enemy until they burst open and spew out chain lightning to all nearby enemies. I gotta admit, it's a pretty useful function. As for the rocket launcher, this game has a Celestial Claw. It's a magical staff that pulls out planets from space and time, shrinks them down, and then allows you to fire them like an explosive projectile. You're even able to occasionally pull out the Earth. Now, Medieval's ultimate weapon is the Eternum. It operates pretty much the same way that the BFG does, in that you shoot it in any room and watch everything get destroyed by beams of magic. It also bears a striking resemblance to ribbon candy. By far my favorite weapon in the game, though, which is saying something, would be the Star of Torment. It's a morning star made of crystals that shoots out a cluster of shards with every swipe, and these shards will launch enemies backwards and pin them to the nearest wall. It's my absolute favorite type of weapon to use in any FPS, and I've been in love with this sort of weapons in stuff like the Stake Gun in Painkiller, or the Penetrator in Fear. Last but not least in your arsenal is your trusty axe, which ain't no slouch. It's surprisingly powerful and will actually pull enemies closer to it when they get within a certain distance, so I recommend using it. Now up to this point, I've neglected to mention that the best part about the weapons in this game is something called Soul Mode. See, in the classic shooter Heretic, there is a power-up known as a Tome of Power, and it would supercharge all of your weapons for about 40 seconds. A Medieval basically took this idea, but turned it into a core mechanic instead of a power-up, and called it Soul Mode. All you need to do is collect souls to fill up the soul meter at the bottom left, which is easy, because every time you kill an enemy, they'll drop a soul. And once the meter's full, you unlock the ability to activate Soul Mode with a hotkey, which will unlock an extremely powerful alternative mode of fire for every weapon in your arsenal. For instance, the Staff of the Azure Orb becomes kind of a rapid-fire machine gun and will liquefy every enemy it kills. The Whisperer's Edge, on the other hand, will shoot out wider arcs of energy, and the arcs will now ricochet off the walls for added fun. Even your ultimate gets an upgrade, and the Eternum will just now send out a black hole that'll suck everything in the vicinity into it, which includes you if you ain't careful. Your trusty axe also gets an upgrade, and it'll start spinning like a boat propeller. It'll even function like one underwater. Originally, Soul Mode worked a little differently, where once you filled up the meter, it would automatically just activate the next time you used a weapon, but people complained about it and it was changed to a hotkey activation. Personally, I prefer the original way, and thanks to the developers, anyone who wants to play it that way still can. Just head into the options menu and you can click on a setting that'll have it work the way it did originally. And it's from the same menu that you can activate Warrior Mode, which will make it so your weapons don't carry over from level to level, so you only have your axe to start with. You know, in case you thought the game was too easy and wanted more of a challenge. Obviously, a Medieval's kick-ass arsenal wouldn't really be worth much without a proper enemy roster to use it on, and luckily the game delivers that in spades. Like, you have these green enemies that dual-wield axes and pounce on you like a cheetah from across the map. They're easily one of the fastest enemies I've ever encountered in a video game. Then you've got these Lovecraftian-esque monsters made of tentacles and eyeballs, who then use those eyes as a clustered projectile to spew at you. There's also these wizards that ride upon crystal animals, and you're tasked with having to kill the mount and then the rider to fully defeat them. So it's like two enemies in one. Or how about that enemy I showed at the beginning of this video? You know, the one wielding the giant freaking hookshot? They will scorpion your ass on over to them, and then either drop you into some kind of hazardous pit, or just start wailing on you. Now the best part of all these examples is that each of them comes from a different episode of the game. You see, each episode comes with its own unique enemy roster, so you're never going to suffer from lack of variety. Compared to most older shooters, the enemy AI in Medieval is quite tenacious. Enemies aren't just going to be standing around waiting for you to come for them, or taking potshots at you from behind cover. Instead, they will seek you out and pursue you the moment they get a whiff that you're in the area. Each enemy is also weaker to certain weapons in your arsenal more than they are to others. Now, I know there's a certain Aussie YouTuber who expressed a little bit of annoyance because he perceived many of the enemies in episode 3 to be kind of bullet spongy. Except, his main problem was that he just failed to use the right tool for the job. Some fire elemental giving you grief? Douse him with the water staff. Couple of rock golems blocking your path? Chuck a planet at them. Tiki head coming your way? Well, pull out the Star of Torment and start wailing on them until they fly the other direction. Now, sometimes it isn't that simple. Sometimes with enemy the right tool is situational. Like these spiked balls in episode 5 are pretty easy to deal with in more open areas with the Whisperer's Edge. That's because the wide arc of its attack will hit multiple targets at once. Meanwhile, if you're in a more narrow setting, the water staff's pretty good at knocking them backwards and conserving ammo, and it homes in on them. There's even one enemy you fight as a shield and can deflect your attacks right back at you. Attacking them requires you to be careful, plus they also throw flaming spears which if they hit you can cause prolonged fire damage. So you need to play smart and fast or you're going to end up dead. Level design in Medieval is also pretty awesome, and it's another area that nicely melds the old with the new. See, on the one hand, the game has fairly abstracted levels with maze-like qualities, and you'll need to collect keys and activate switches to progress to the end of the level, just like in an older shooter. The thing is, though, it doesn't ever end up feeling like some tedious treasure hunt like many of the older shooters did, you know, like Hexen. And you're never going to be walking around for 15 to 20 minutes just trying to figure out where a switch is, or find out what it triggered in the level. In fact, as soon as you activate most switches in the game, it's almost immediately apparent what it's connected to. Like this switch activated that door. As another side note, if you see this fella here, you shoot it until it dies. Or you do. Also, whenever you need to activate more than one switch in the game, a little text will pop letting you know how many switches are left for you to activate. Plus, most of them tend to be close by. In a nutshell, the game takes the level design ethos from classic shooters, but then manages to trim off all the fat, which is nice. Honestly, one of my favorite things is the fact that levels are designed in such a way that you get funneled back to where you need to be, whether that's the next area you need to explore, or getting back to the main room. No hand-holding mini-maps or little markers, just good efficient design. So you shouldn't really worry about getting lost. I mean, I know I did, but I also have the navigational abilities of a drunken hamster. Now, just like the enemy roster and the look of each level, enemy encounters are structured in a variety of different ways to keep you on your toes. It also does a great job of pacing out the enemy encounters with puzzles so that you never feel too overwhelmed or get bored of the combat. Each episode in the game has the same basic layout. First, you fight through 3 levels based around puzzles and enemy encounters that block your path as you try to locate an exit, and then you finish it up with a 4th level where you fight a boss. Now, unfortunately, bosses are probably one of the weakest parts of the game. Not so much because they're badly designed per se, but because they're kinda big pushovers. At most, it might take you a death or two to learn the pattern, but then after that, killing them shouldn't be a problem. Of course, this is assuming you don't know the optimal strategy that'll allow you to tear through each and every boss like they're tissue paper. I mean, with this strategy, you can defeat them in under a minute. Now, if you don't want to know the strategy, skip to this point in the video. Okay, so the best way to beat the boss in the game is to make sure you enter a level with a full soul meter. Then when the fight starts, you just pull out the Star of Torment, activate soul mode, and then wail on them until they die. Which will not take long. Again, the bosses being easy didn't really detract from the overall enjoyment I had with the game, but it is an issue they might want to address, either by nerfing the effectiveness of some of your weapons, or giving the bosses a better health bar. Whichever works. Okay, back to talking about something this game does really well. Mainly the music, which is not only wonderful, but it really helps build an atmosphere in the game. The score for this game is composed by none other than Andrew Hulshult, because, you know, of course he is. It's hard to find a retro FPS that doesn't have his music in it. Not that I'm complaining. I mean, there's a good reason he keeps getting hired. His work for Medieval is largely inspired by the soundtracks for games like Unreal and Deus Ex, as well as Jeremy Soul's work on Skyrim. The music has a good blend of synths and strings, and overall it has a sound that comes off as something that's both odd and abstract, but also very pretty and ethereal. Kinda like the game itself. In fact, here's a nice sampling of the music. Take a listen. Each track in the game is composed in such a way so it has a more ambient section for when you're exploring a level, and a heavier, more thumping section for combat. This way it can crossfade into one or the other based on this player's situation. It's a fantastic score, and it might even be my favorite work from Andrew yet. I'm so sorry, Tusk, please forgive me. There is one thing in particular about the score that I wanted to mention though. See, in the track Eventide, there's a string section that reminds me a whole lot of this song in Game of Thrones. Like, here, take a listen to Eventide real quick. Sound familiar to anyone? Because to me it reminds me of the Greyjoy theme. Like, I swear to God it sounds so similar. Andrew, if you ever watch this, I need to know. Is this an intentional or unintentional nod to that song? Comment down below. At last, I can finally talk about the 7th and final episode in the game, which is just a fantastic send-off for the whole experience. Now, I don't really want to spoil anything about this episode, which is why there isn't a single clip of it previously in the video. So if you don't want to be spoiled for the episode, please skip here in the video. Okay, so the final episode takes place in The Void. It's a heavily abstracted realm where levels seem to be deliberately designed to disorient the players as much as possible. Platforms will just appear as you move, the levels get all twisty, and the game camera will be forced to tilt in such a way that it starts looking like a Dutch angle. Even the enemies embody this abstraction, as they're often composed of nothing but darkness and squiggles. Or in the case of this guy, it's just a weird orb. This episode does a great job of increasing the challenge and really ups the ante to 11. So much so that in the level before the final boss, you are greeted once again by the bosses from episode 6, who apparently just want to whoop your ass one last time. I opted to run past them, because I am a giant pussy. The final boss itself is also pretty fun, and it has a huge health bar. As far as satisfying climaxes go, you'd be hard-pressed to do a better job than what they did here. Seriously, the team did a fantastic job. Once you beat in the campaign, there's still some stuff you can do. Like, you could always go back and replay every level to try and find all the secrets that you missed. Seriously, scour the beginning of each level because I guarantee there's at least one secret close by, if not more. Or you could also try out Horde mode, which will allow you to fight waves of enemies until you die in a small handful of custom arenas. It's a good way to test out how the game plays, plus it's just a fun way to kill time when you're bored. There's also cheat codes you can mess around with, including everything from God mode and giving yourself all the weapons, to changing how the game looks. Dude, this kind of hurts my eyes. The game even has a code that'll allow you to burp. I don't know why, but it has it. If you'd like, the game also provides a nice codex that you can flip through for more background on the lore, or if you wanted to get some extra information on items and enemies. I really can't recommend this game enough. Medieval does a fantastic job of recreating that feeling you got when playing your favorite classic shooter for the first time, while also sprinkling in some modern ideas to polish out some of the rougher edges of the genre. It boldly sets itself apart from its inspirations and other retro-inspired shooters, and is easily one of my favorite games of the year. Plus, the campaign will give you 10 or 12 hours of entertainment your first time through. I don't know what Leon and Simon's next project is going to be, but I'm definitely looking forward to it after this. You can grab the game off of Steam or GOG for just $20. You could also go pick up the soundtrack, it's only $10. Well, that's all I have to say. Thank you all for watching. I know I'm a bit late, again, but I appreciate your patience. I have more videos in the work, so please stay tuned. Until next time.